Hi, I'm Brandon Cullins, and we're going to talk about what kind of foundation I like to have on horses before I start them on the barrels, and how I like them broken before they're ready to go to the pattern. First thing is I like to have them have a pretty soft face and give the pressure and be able to move around pretty easy. And I like them to stay stood up. I never want one to kind of fall into a circle. I think the biggest thing when you first start in colts and asking them to turn is when you pull the rein or push them into that circle, they want to drop their shoulder and kind of fall down and use their body weight to make them turn. So I never let them do that from the start, because I always want them up and pulling all the way around the barrel. So I want to be able to come into the circle at a walk. I start everything at a walk and have them stay stood up and be able to pull themselves around with their front feet and keep their hip into the circle. That way they can stay four-wheel drive all the way around the barrel. Then once I get that, then I want to ask for a little bit of movement away from my inside rein. So they can, not so much counter arc, but I just want them to move their front feet across, just so they move off that inside pressure. And I want them to do it pretty easy. I don't want them to fight me. I want to be able to do it as little movement as possible. And like I said, I also want them to be able to have a good stop and good feel and be able to back up pretty easy and just good control over them. Like I said, I always like them stood up where I can kind of have all control of their whole body. And I like a lot of feel in my horses. That way, if when I'm making a run, if I get into trouble, then I can be able to move them. So I kind of want them, locked onto the barrels, but I want them locked onto me more so. So that's why I think I take a little bit longer to start them and letting them turn than some people do. Ooh. Then once I get all that out of walk and everything good, then I'll start trotting them. And my biggest thing is I like to kind of keep them between the reins with just a little bit of shape. Maybe I can see the corner of their eye. But when I started putting them in this circle, I'll squeeze my reins kind of as that inside hind leg is coming up underneath of them. That's when I squeeze my reins. And this really drives them up underneath themselves and kind of keeps them light, where you can kind of just move them with the weight of your reins and you're not having to pull them. So that's the next step I go to at a trot. Then once I get that done, then I feel like I can move them wherever I want, however I want, with not really moving my reins much. I can just move my hips, put a little leg on them. But like, I want complete control of them. Like, I don't want them fancy broke hiding their face or anything like that, but I just want like control of all their body parts. And I feel like when they are in this frame, and no matter what speed you're going, they're always up underneath themselves and they have control of their body. They never really expose themselves. I feel like they're better on the ground. And like I said, if you get in trouble, you can get them out of it a lot easier. Ooh. Then the first thing I do when I start them on the barrels is I lope a lot of circles around them, just big, easy circles around the barrels. So I want them to be able to lope kind of square, kind of straight between the reins. And I don't want to put a lot of shape in them, but just kind of like this, where they're just staying between my reins, staying stood up. So I want them to be able to do this pretty easy before I go to the barrels. This is what I feel like teaches them to pull with their front end around the barrels, where they don't peg their front feet and get stuck and swing their butt. So if they're always pulling around a barrel, then I can kind of go back and finesse the rest of it. And then I want them to be on a pretty loose rein. I don't want to have to slow them down or pull on them a bunch. Cool. And once I get all that's done, all that finished on them, then I feel like I can start them and start teaching them how to turn the barrels.